Good Thursday morning. I know that I am live now on Facebook and on LinkedIn. So we are here. Hopefully, my internet works well. I am here with Treasure Williams-Wood. I sometimes see this hyphenated. Are you always hyphenated or are you sometimes hyphenated?
No, no, people just do it, but it's not hyphenated.
Okay, because I started with no hyphenation, then I saw a hyphenation. I was like, which one to go? So again, welcome. Nice talking to you. I'm looking forward to this. Thank you for saying yes to coming on
Thank
DEI
you for
Speech
inviting
IQ.
me.
I'm so happy that you're here. Cheers to you and all you do.
Cheers.
And cheers to us being here. Shout out to the adult speech pathologists out doing their thing. My dad had a stroke, so it's very important, and I definitely value somebody else being able to, support our family members, sisters, brothers, etc. Especially as I'm getting older, I feel like, even one day, knock on all the woods, of course, but I never know. I'm not kidding.
It's
I'm
true.
like,
We
take
can't
care
take
of
our health
me.
for granted. We cannot take our health for granted.
Take care of me. Somebody needs to come in and see me. So absolutely. So thank you again. Welcome to, if anybody is tuning in on LinkedIn. I was looking on Instagram. I'm not sure that it's showing on Instagram, but you know what? We're on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook for show. So we good to go. We will have our recording and we'll make sure that we chit chat. The first time that we chit chatted, we kind of went overtime. So
It was supposed to be what, a 10-minute call, and we ended up talking
2 hours or something.
2 hours.
Really long.
It could have
So
went longer too.
exactly, it was just because it was late and we were hungry.
Yep.
But thank you so much for being you and for like really, kind of connecting well. I'm looking forward to this chat. And I know that some people know you, but other people do not. So, of course, let us know how you got here. In other words, how did you become a speech pathologist? What is it that you do? And, what areas are you focused on?
Yeah, well, my journey has definitely been, I would say, God ordained and completely not up to me in the way that I came into this profession. I started off actually in undergrad as a vocal performance major, studying classical voice and music. And my paths crossed with a speech language pathologist on campus, and the rest is history. Um, I'm originally from Michigan, graduated from Western Michigan University, go Broncos. And I had the benefit of being mentored and just nurtured by some amazing folks. Dr. Yvette Hyder being one of them was my teacher and just had such a profound impact on my growth and development as a speech language pathologist. When I left undergrad, I actually worked as a speech language pathology assistant, a SLPA, working with kids.
Okay.
Until I went and pursued my master's degree at Hampton University, in Hampton, Virginia, and then ultimately found my way back to the Midwest. Once I got my master's degree, I transitioned to the world of adults. I fell in love with adult care and specifically neurodegenerative disorders of communication and neurogenic disorders. I always thought that I was going to be a voice-focused speech pathologist, but again, life had other plans. And it was around the time where my grandmother was diagnosed with dementia. And so I became one of her care partners and just dedicated my life to supporting those who are also living with dementia and their families who are walking that walk. So I've worked in every setting across the medical continuum, from acute care to inpatient rehab. I've worked at some of the top hospitals like Shirley Ryan Ability Lab Hospital, which is the #1 rehab hospital in the country, to outpatient clinics, to day rehab facilities. And now I am currently, I've launched my own private practice and consulting firm in the South Side Chicago that's focused on bringing that expertise to my community. And I am so excited about that.
Excellent. Wow. Yes, the journey. One of the great things about being a speech pathologist is the fact that we could do so much, right? Like,
Yes,
so
you
in so many
can.
different settings, we could move through, kind of from, so to speak, the mindset of kind of working for someone else to working for ourselves,
Yeah.
and do that with enough knowledge base, frankly, that we know that we have a job and that we can move forward and that we, have options, frankly, which is
Yeah.
the other thing that I try to, remind myself that
Yeah.
that we can do so much more. So even as we move forward, we continue to kind of build and grow and then find new ways, new avenues. I also love Dr. Hyder. I'll be able to interview her next
Oh, you
month.
are?
Actually scheduled,
Oh, that's
yes.
wonderful.
So make sure that come on and check us out
I
next
definitely
next month.
will.
So in April, I definitely will be talking to her, God willing. And so I'm excited about that because yes, of course, I've talked to her before, but to be able to interview her and just be able to kind of, really open my audience up to what she does and how she does it and how she's really, like you said, influenced so many people in our field.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's great for you. Good for you. I can't say that about any of my professors from college, but they were good. They were good. They were good. They were good. They just
Yeah.
weren't her. Not everybody can
It
be
just
her.
weren't
That's
her.
okay.
That's a good
Yeah,
one. Yeah.
that's okay. So yeah, this is definitely an area that she talks about also, which is of course I want to say she's kind of revolutionized before anybody else was talking about it, pre 2020, let's just say, DEI in speech pathology, and making sure that we are kind of recognizing and talking about how we walk in the field, how we are observed. And again, she's not the only one by any stretch. But she's definitely one that has, so to speak, written the book on it, right? So um when when did you notice that there was a disparity in speech and hearing, and kind of how did you come to realization, so to speak, of a need for let's just say, if you noticed, I'll say it that way too, because some people don't notice, but if you noticed, and when did that happen and how?
I don't know who doesn't notice, but perhaps people that have like vision impairments or can't, are blind or willfully ignorant. But
There you go.
that's another episode. I would say that I noticed as soon as I entered the academic space as a student, as a student, going for an undergraduate, I it was never a space where, as a Black woman or as a person of color, that I felt welcomed by my peers. Never, a place where I felt welcome in general by faculty. I found that I had a core handful of faculty who believed in me and invested in me. And without them, I would not be here today, because I felt that it was really an exception to the rule to have faculty that were culturally responsive in their teaching, that understood what it meant not to microaggress, and that, encouraged me that, no, you belong here, you should take up space here. I was what we call an only. in my undergraduate program, like many people of color are in their undergraduate CSD programs. And it just felt like there was barrier after barrier after barrier kind of put in place for people like me not to be in the profession. And so that was probably the first point of entry where I've noticed that there is a disparity. And then on the other side in practice, just noticing with individuals who have Black and brown folks who are adults with communication science, speech disorders, just how the certain social determinants
Mm,
really dictate the outcome of their health and the quality of care, like having access to health, having access to nutritious foods, having access to culturally responsive practitioners, having access to tools to build health literacy. That was probably as I was studying and beginning to do my clinical rotations that I thought, wow, if there are two different healthcare systems, and if you look like me, you're getting a whole different experience by design.
right. Wow. I mean, definitely, for many people, whether it's color blindness, as they, as was popular back in my day when I was in grad school. But again, I think that at minimum, most of us who walk into any spaces, we're looking around and we're saying, why is this? What's going on? Where's everyone else? I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure that there's other qualified Black, brown, and other colors of people. And again, I'm using that term super loosely, but certainly people from different cultural backgrounds. One of the things for me, I guess, is language backgrounds. We just
yeah,
like we need people that speak differently.
yeah.
We don't
And
have
that,
that.
yeah,
So
and just the
I,
conundrum we have in our profession where we regularly microaggress individuals who code switch and individuals who speak are bidialectical. I'm a bidialectical, bilingual Black woman. I code switch unapologetically at this phase of my life, but I have been in many situations where it was almost the kiss of death for an academic career or a professional
mm,
career. And, I'm also bilingual and French speaking. Um, Speech pathologist. I've lived abroad in France, studied there, worked there, and just looking at how, for me, when I code switch in my brain, it feels exactly the same as when I switch to speaking French. But one has a certain stigma and the other does not. One
okay.
means I'm intelligent and well-traveled, and the other means I'm unprofessional and incompetent or ghetto and ignorant. And that's something specifically that just is mind-boggling, right? In the profession of speech language pathology,
Yeah,
it's by nature and virtue of what we are trying to do
right.
with our clients and with the people that we serve.
Right. Especially the people that, to your work, really. These are people that are caught in a moment of their lives. It's not that they're trying to necessarily, speak better, whatever that means. It's that they're trying to speak again. Like they are
Yeah.
I was going to say recapturing, but restarting, so to speak, sometimes with this process of kind of, after post stroke, post head injury, post whatever. They want us to be regular with them. They want us to talk to them in a frankly a more human and understandable way. And sometimes,
Yeah.
we're talking over their heads if we're talking in speeches, and that doesn't doesn't register. It just doesn't, and it's not helpful, frankly, which is the bigger
Yeah.
part. It's just not
And
helpful.
the sense of relief and pure joy that I see wash over a patient's face when I walk into a hospital room and they say, oh my goodness, this is a person who looks like me and who speaks my dialect. And I'm too tired to code switch. This person sees me and knows that I I am no less valuable because of the way I speak. And the same thing with my students. I've had the pleasure of teaching at the graduate level. And, seeing that one or two or that handful of students of color and knowing that I can see their shoulders just kind of relax from their ears when they
Mm.
know, when they see me code switch, because I tell them at the beginning of my courses, I've always said, hey, I code switch. If you're triggered by that, I have a reading list for you. And so let's get started. And so I think that doing that and taking up space in that way really improves healthcare and learning outcomes for the
Yeah.
people that we've dedicated our lives to serving.
Right. And it's not just a feeling, it's backed by science, as we like to do. We like evidence, or at least we say we like evidence. But it is backed by, real evidence that says students learn better when you talk to them in a way that is more understandable. But also, there is actual evidence that says that there are certain I would say certain students that do prefer having a professor of color. And I think that we don't have enough of us in the, as I like to say, on this side of the table, right? So in other words, you're a student and they're working on diversity as far as, student body, but it's like, who is teaching you, who's making decisions on the other side, who is, bringing your advocacy kind of to the table when you're not in the room as a student. And that's where the faculty, the instructors, the clinical faculty come into play, because again, we're the only ones around sometimes,
Yeah.
and again, thinking differently, having our, kind of our say at the table is also very helpful, which actually, if I'm being honest, this is going to kind of lead us off a little bit of our questions, but I'm just saying. So you took a seat at the table for a brand new position. So with Asha as the member at large. I just, because I think that this is something that people need to know, because as you said, it's term limited. So you're gonna be rolling off at
Sure
some point,
am. December
So
31st at a 12:01.
well, we still got time. So, we got some time. But just to say, like, how did that come about? What was that process like? How did you get interested in that?
Well, it kind of came about by accident. I've always been really passionate about advocacy,
Okay.
public policy, and teaching others and building community-based partnerships. And so, and then I've also had this tension in me with this great passion and love for our profession, but a really big frustration with the state of many things regarding our profession, right? The lack of adequate reimbursement, the lack of diversity and equity, the lack of people just knowing what we do as speech language pathologists, the lack of accessibility to the profession, just all these things. And I've always been raised that unless you're going to step up and be a part of the solution, like shut your mouth. And so, this opportunity came along and someone reached out to me and said, I always hear you talking about the things that you are frustrated about with the profession, like this role as member at large, meaning connecting with members and being a liaison to the board and going out and going to Capitol Hill and doing these advocacy based tasks. That sounds like you. And I thought, there's no way I would be able to get on this because I'm just too fiery. I'm just too speak my mind. And, it's the only position on the board that is directly voted. All of the other positions, the members vote to confirm the slate. But the member at large positions, direct membership votes. And so I said, well, I'm just going to explain to people what my plan is and what I think. And if they're down with it, um, you know, then we'll see. And it was a resounding yes. I connected with people and I have been in the role just trying to transform what we as speech language pathologists and audiologists think advocacy is and what it isn't, and what the difference between complaining and advocating and walking the walk, and the difference between having conversations that are solution focused versus, venting and ranting
Right.
in ways that are not helpful at, the state level, the local level within our profession, and the federal level, and really looking at the big picture of all of these different systems of oppression in terms of public policy related to healthcare, related to education, related to um, access, all of these things, and how many contributors there are to dysfunction in our profession.
Right, right, right. I mean, that such an important role. And as you said, I know that, we can all sit around and complain and bitch and moan about what's happening. But the truth is you gotta do something. Like, what is it that we're doing? So for us on our behalf, I thank you for taking on that role, because somebody needs to be kind of that person, and hopefully they will continue with that role, because I know that it's
And they
relatively
are, yeah,
new.
they are.
Yeah.
Board nominations, I think, just closed. So I look forward
Okay.
to welcoming my predecessor. And, it's volunteer leadership. Nobody gets paid, but it has been one of the most rewarding journeys in leadership and learning that I have experienced in my life. Not because everything has been perfect, but because I have learned so much from ASHA members about what they need, what being heard looks like. And it's always given me such food for thought and made me think in a different way. Even when I may not agree, even though when I think I'm right. And, there's been times where I've been so wrong. And just having those just rich conversations with our colleagues has really been one of the most rewarding things that
Yeah.
I can say I've experienced.
Well, like I said, we thank you for being the first doing that, and hopefully we will get some. Well, not just hopefully. Let's be clear. Change is hard. Change takes a long time. We all wish the change happened immediately and people would just listen to us and do it the way that we like it to be done.
Yeah.
But after, speaking to many people, several people, everybody, has been working at this for years. This isn't something brand new. This is something that's hard, and we're pushing forward. So keep doing what you're doing. Even I know that you will.
Thank you for that
And keep,
encouragement.
exactly, moving forward. We need you. We need you wherever you are, and we will continue to need you at least for a little while longer to make sure that, through this year that that we are being heard, and that we are being advocated for, as best as possible. Again, as we talk about what diversity, equity, and inclusion, belonging, and so to speak, multiculturalism really is. Have you seen changes in the field since you started? And if have they been positive or negative? Because sometimes, there's a balance sometimes.
I have seen changes in the field regarding the way we name things. And it's always something that I love about teaching Gen Z and teaching students. And I always tell them, the things that they talk about so freely, we didn't have the tools to name things. We didn't have the tools to say, I'm being gaslit, or I feel triggered, or I am microaggressed. Like, we didn't have those tools. And so I think just by being able to name these things has been such a powerful change in our profession. I also think that there have, especially, around 2020 and um, even before then, with structured programs for retaining and growing the amount of Black and Brown speech language pathologists and audiologists. We've seen an increase, and that's been wonderful. We've seen, an increase of Black and Brown folks coming into the profession. We've seen an increase of programs and, targeted efforts. But in that same vein, it feels like the more things change, the more they stay the same. And what I have found is that a lot of these structures, as they are being built, they're also being actively under attack, and they're
Mm,
also being actively torn down. And then some of them are just falling apart on their own because they were never built with the intention to be lasting, but rather to be performative. And I think
Mhm.
that is what we're seeing a lot right now, is
Mhm.
that DEI fatigue from 2020, when everybody had their black squares on their social media and every company was making a statement and everybody, was doing all these things, and they went and made their Black Lives Matter signs and, read white fragility and how to be an anti-racism. And we saw white people engaging in their anti-racist book clubs. And now 2024, I think that those who are not truly invested in doing the work are really sick of it. Those who are not comfortable with being uncomfortable are over it. And that is the performative aspect in that way has been predictable.
Yeah.
Predictable, and in terms of a lasting change, I have not seen a lasting change in our government and public policy makers really implementing things that cannot be torn down to address systemic racism in our profession. I also have not seen um, our workplaces and the settings that we work really follow through on some of the things that they have promised and said that they are on a mission to do. And so
Right.
again, the weight has fallen back and the labor has fallen back on those who were talking about DEI before it got popular.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's cyclical, right? Like it's tiring, but it's also because you just generally see like, okay, two steps forward, and then people kind of sit down, and then that sit down time gives people opportunities to kind of undermine certain structures or certain programs.
Mhm.
Yes, of course, we know that the ruling against I want to say Harvard it was, has negatively impacted universities, but that didn't
Mhm.
change, so to speak, what businesses could do. That didn't change what schools could do, meaning like in the school system, in the educational system, K through 12, like we could do things differently. We could do things differently in the hospitals. We could do things differently in business. We could, but again, it's like almost like, well, if they aren't going to do it, then we're not going to do it either. It's like everybody kind of
Yeah, well, it was an excuse. It was an excuse
exactly.
to, it was an excuse, and it just shows the lack of genuine investment. And
Yeah.
that's okay, because those who are committed to doing the work, it doesn't really impact us. We're really going to be doing it anyway. And it's just a reflection on those folks that don't want to truly make that investment. And that's fine. I think, like to your point, just the hits that we've taken this year alone with the Office of DEI at the federal level being defunded,
Right.
these universities coming out and banning instruction related to diversity or equity, in turn with programs where people are being trained to provide culturally responsive care, right? It's like almost,
Yeah.
the antithesis of what we were trying to do. And, I think what folks don't understand is there is you know, racism and lack of equity is a social determinant of health.
Mm-hmm.
Experience, racism kills people.
Yeah.
Racism, people that suffer from the plague and the disease that is structural racism have poorer outcomes health-wise and education-wise than those who do not.
Yeah.
People who suffer from inequity in terms of, their level of education being dictated by their zip code and their services being dictated by where they live, have poor healthcare outcomes. And that is a well-studied, well-known fact. And so when we think we're doing all of these things and dismantling these things to win or prove a point, we are only contributing to furthering these public health crises and these education crises that we see across our country.
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the things that I always try to remember when looking at, it said, I'm not the first person to say it. I won't be the last person. And so it's follow the money, right? Like, so in other words, people could talk really, really loudly about something,
Yeah.
meaning businesses. They can put out flyers and, you know, do a town hall meeting or whatever else that they choose to do. But if the money isn't really behind it, it's not really a priority. It
Yeah.
really just isn't.
Yeah.
And again, that's, something that's very obvious to those of us that pay attention to those things. It's like, so do you actually have do you have funding behind this? And when you're pulling funding, then you're also following the money. You're
Yeah.
saying this is no longer a priority
This
for
is
you.
not, yeah, you money talks, you speak. And so, one thing that I obtained my clinical doctorate in speech language pathology from Northwestern University. And one of the most valuable things that I learned there is this idea of social entrepreneurship, public policy, and organizational behavior in the speech pathology space. And I think that, we're one of many professions that
Yeah.
just don't want to pay people for their labor. It's as simple as that. We want all of these things from a speech pathologist, and we want, people who are culturally responsive and bilingual and have all of these different skills, but then we simply just don't want to pay Black and brown people for their labor. And those two things cannot coexist. We can't say that we value these things, but then we're not willing to pay people for their labor. And that then it magically expect by osmosis that inviting people into these spaces, whether it be work settings or academic spaces, but not being ready to foster and protect their growth and provide psychological safety to them, that they're just going to magically be able to enrich the space and thrive. And so, yeah, that has been something that I've noticed just in my experience, at large in our profession, is that the expectations on speech language pathologists to like make a dollar out of 15 cents when
Hmm.
it comes to caseload, workload, public health, counseling, academics, financial, is just the math does not math.
Yeah, agreed, agreed. We definitely need much more support financially. If I am coming in and out, it looks like I'm a little unstable. It's raining here, so I apologize for those of you that are like, "What's going on?" But it's raining here, so maybe my Wi-Fi is a little bit sketchy today. But what is your vision for SLPs, or for our career and our field? What would you say if you really wanted to like transformatively change things? What is your kind of one big idea?
I think my one big idea is to break down the DEI silos. I think right now in our profession specifically, there's a school of thought that we just like walk into our profession and we put on our DEI hat, and then we do the DEI, we just whip up some equity, and we're culturally competent. And then we take that off and we go out and we are tools of white supremacy to our colleagues, tools of white supremacy, oppressing our students, microaggressing the lady at the coffee shop. And, to understand that all of that is connected. You cannot be, and this is something that we talk about in my faith walk, is that you cannot be publicly fruitful if you are not privately healthy. And so if privately you have not done the work to heal your own fragility and to heal your own contributions to structural and systemic racism, you are not going to be able to go into someone's treatment room or classroom or workspace and authentically lead from a place of culturally responsive practice. And so I think that as a profession, my vision is for us to stop thinking that it's a box to check and that it's somebody else's job to do, because it's all of our job. If you are not recognizing and unpacking the harm that you bring to a space, myself included, then you are a product of the problem. You're right. Every time I interact, every time I do something, I have to stop and think, now, I was harmed in this way, maybe, but how did I do harm? How did I do that? And what would I do differently? And how can I empower myself not to make those types of choices again? Because we're all human. And so I think that increasing the personal accountability of um, professionals in our field, specifically white people, where it is not seen as speaking out on these issues is attacking white people, but it's seen as attacking white supremacy. It's not seen as attacking a personal group of people, but this ideology that has gotten us to this point that is clearly not good for anyone.
Right. Yeah. No, you said so much right there that, really resonates with me. And again, it's sometimes where we all say, okay, I've been in this field for over 25 years. And it's like, so, yes, I can say that absolutely when I was a student, I recognized it. I made an effort. I can say though that, maybe, once I got into the field, I kind of took a step back and then kind of like let things be
Of course.
and kind of saw how things played out, so to speak. And that can be, a breather, sure,
That's
no problem.
everybody's
Not a breather.
walk, though. And that's the
Yeah.
thing is that to me, there's no shame. I haven't been on the board of directors my entire career. There have been times where I have not engaged at all. And
Yep.
it's a journey for everyone.
Yep.
But I think the key to me is just like living a healthy lifestyle. Like I've been very healthy and fit at certain parts of my life, and the other parts is like, you know what, I'm just out here right now. I got to get it together, but we have to have that same philosophy about keeping our foot on the gas. And, it's definitely a marathon and not a sprint. And
Right.
understanding that, you know what, right now, how is my like health? Like you say, your DIIQ, oh, I'm lagging, or, we're constantly moving back and forth along this continuum. And
Yeah.
it's normal.
Right. And I also think of it, maybe my track references, but it's kind of like the baton pass, right? Like, so in other words, it's like we're all running the same race, but it's a 4x100. Like you can't run
Mhm.
all legs of it. You gotta pass the baton. And sometimes you need to pass the baton. You can't take it all on yourself anyway.
No,
So and then you come back
especially
for the
Black
next
and brown
race.
people. I especially want Black and brown people to hear this because we do take on so much, and we have just been um, generationally traumatized and conditioned to believe that we're supposed to just do the cognitive emotional labor for free, and that's not true. We don't have to, and we can prioritize our health, and it is not our job to do this work exclusively, and that we just because we are committed to this work does not mean we have to stay in places and environments that made us sick, does not mean we have to tolerate disrespect, does not mean we have to martyr ourselves for this work. So if I was
Yeah.
going to close with anything, it would be that that you can be committed to this work and still not let them do you any kind of way, as my
Right.
grandmother would say.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. So what's on the horizon for you? I know we only have a few minutes, so what's on the horizon for you, and how can people support you in your next projects? Where would they contact you and get updated?
Yeah, well, I'm very active on Instagram. You can follow me at Dr. Williams-Wood, SLP. Also very active here on LinkedIn. My Gmail is drwilliamswoodslp@gmail.com. And what's on the horizon for me are building these new systems in the South Side of Chicago. I am really blessed to have started my own clinic and my own consulting firm that works with some major healthcare institutions, and also engaging in some clinical research to help support individuals living with neurogenic communication disorders, and making sure that they have access to high quality care.
Right. Absolutely. Very important. All very important. There's so much more work to be done. I went to a hospital 2 days ago that's in the Bronx. So I'm in New York. I went to the Bronx, this particular hospital in the Bronx, and was really shocked to see that the SLP department, if as part of the rehab department, so to speak, the SLP was basically by herself. Um, in other words, she has to take care of all the things, whatever it is. And that, some of the, kind of, I want to say, necessary equipment and resources and support. Not that she doesn't get the support from her rehab, facility, but that, really you need things to you need a, if you want to do an MBS, you actually need the device to be able to do an MBS. Like you can't just, assume that it's there. And I did, like I'm like, it's a big hospital, it's in the Bronx, but
You
again,
assume,
some of
right,
them are
but
under.
structurally, these
Yeah,
structures have not been created for our profession to thrive, right? You
right.
can walk into any given school and see a beautiful school or a big school that has just been renovated, and you're like, where's the SLP office? And they're still in a closet. You know what I mean? And you're like, well, how does that work? And so just, like, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've seen
Yeah.
it as well.
So again, I'm going to do, because I've seen it now with my eyes, and I'm like, for real, we're still doing this. So
Yeah.
part of me is like, that's a little bit of a mission for me right now. Like, who do I need to talk to? And I know that I don't have all the influence, but there's got to be, got to be a word that can get out to
You'd
somebody
be
that can talk.
surprised,
Yeah,
and because we
that's
are,
right.
I think, again, we are sometimes the most underutilized, under recognized, and underappreciated um, profession in healthcare and education, where they don't realize the value in having a speech language pathologist in your corner.
Mhm.
And they don't realize what we bring to the table in terms of healthcare outcomes. And so that is a wonderful mission to have.
Right. Yeah. No. I mean, why not? I always say, if I can say it and if somebody will listen, then I might as well say it. Like,
Yeah, it
what
doesn't
am I
hurt.
waiting for?
Worst they can say is no, or we don't care, but they can't say that nobody told them.
Nobody told them exactly. And I'm sure they've heard it before. God knows the speech pathologist is a person who I trust is definitely out there talking about what she's doing and how she's doing it and what
Absolutely.
she needs. But again, as we, move forward, as actually, as I am awakened to the possibility, like I have to say something too. And again, like nobody has to listen to me. Just
Yep.
if I say it, then I know that I've said it. I can sleep a little bit easier. Maybe that's on me, right? Like, so
Yep.
that part is
Yep.
on
And
me.
that's all you
I'm
can
willing
do.
to take
Yeah,
that.
that's all
Yeah, I'm
you
willing
can
to
do
take
is,
that.
yeah. And I think that's something that's so important for me in my walk is that, I don't expect everybody to agree with me about everything that I choose to do, because that's my walk and they have their walk. But I know my vision for myself is that at the end of the day, when I leave this earth, what I want to be written about me. What do I want my lasting legacy here to be for myself and my family? And I try to remain true to that. And
Right.
one of the best pieces of advice that I got from someone was that, Treasure, the call on your life was not a conference call. The call that God
Okay.
placed on your
Okay.
life was not a conference call. And I love that, because everybody might not get it. Why is she doing that? Why is she supporting that? Why is she not supporting that? Why did
Right.
she make that decision? And that's okay.
Yeah.
Everyone does not have to understand why you were called to speak out at the hospital, or called to be quiet on something else, called to die on that hill, or called to protect your peace on another hill. A part of doing this work is understanding what your mission, vision, and core values are to yourself in this space. And when you are true to that, you will make mistakes, you will learn lessons, but I have peace.
I love that. I love that. So the bonus question for this month, even though I didn't get to ask last month, um, is that this is Women's History Month. Notice the ladies in my ears, ladies everywhere. So it for one more week, and so the question that we have is who, as far as a kind of a business role model, do you have as a woman that you admire and why? Yeah.
I've said this before and I say it every time. My grandmother, Dr. Matricia Smith Kennedy, my grandmother, in a time where it was unheard of, was a child psychologist and social worker in the Metro Detroit area. And she founded an interdisciplinary practice for children who were in the foster system, the foster care system. And I remember my summers in school working in her practice as a receptionist to try to get spending money, and her teaching me these valuable business lessons on how to structure a private practice and how to lead and how not to lead and how to really serve one's community and the call that is placed on us when we do have the privilege of being educated, that call that is placed on us to serve others. And she did it at a time, like I said, that it wasn't normal. And
Wow.
so I always have looked up to her. And, eventually in her life, she did be get diagnosed with dementia, and I became her care partner, and walking this just huge, just giant of a professional and businesswoman through that journey just made me admire her even more. So yeah.
I love that. I love that. Yes, that's wonderful that you had her in your life. So I appreciate you coming on today. I know that we went over a couple of minutes.
Okay, I appreciate
We
you. We did better today. We didn't go
we
over by hours. So
we have a few people that are on LinkedIn that are giving you lots of thumbs ups, likes, loves, etc. So, you'll see that when you get there, a lot
oh,
of
well, I
positive
was about to say, I don't know how to work stuff, but I'm gonna go back and look.
a lot of positive feedback. And my friend and partner sometimes in crime, Dr. Malcolm, said that she loves this conversation. So we appreciate everybody that's watching. I
Thank
appreciate you.
you.
Cheers to you. Cheers to your next steps. Of course, I'm
Thank
going to
you.
stay in touch and make sure that we collaborate. And if when I shouldn't say if, but when I get to Chicago or when you come to New York,
I
we
know.
we share we share a meal, we break some bread.
Absolutely. I can't wait. I can't wait. Thank you so much for this platform and for having me, Don.
It's been a pleasure hearing you, learning from you, hearing what you're doing, and I appreciate your time. And thank you again for saying yes to being a guest on DEI Speech IQ. And I'm so glad that everything worked out today.
My
So
pleasure. It worked. It worked. My pleasure.
take care. Have a great afternoon.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for coming.